Yeah, sorry if I gave you any anxiety by being a few minutes late.
Well, sort of used to that.
Roman, are you in California or here?
I am in California.
You are in California, okay.
LA. I just got back after a lot of travel over a long time. Sorry, I'm actually opening this in another browser. Give me one sec. It may show me logged on twice.
There's only one of you.
Yeah, exactly. Bob, your hair is looking great.
Well, thank you. I felt like I was going back into the 60s with my hippie look. It's getting so long back here. I was going to do a ponytail. And then I said, no, I don't think I'm going to do a ponytail, but it's close.
I dig it.
I went 10 months without a haircut, so.
I'm close to a year myself, longest I've ever gone.
Hi, Deb.
Good morning, Mayor. How are you?
Good.
Deb, hi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm just sitting out on the lawn of Hoyt Sherman at the moment.
Sure?
Well, I don't think the meeting is there.
A little bit of Friday fun. What can I say?
Well, it looks like the sun is bright there. It isn't in Pleasant Hill.
Well, we will get started in just a couple of minutes. I'll give just a little bit more time for people to get signed on.
And as everyone signs on, please mute your microphone unless you're the active speaker, please. That would be helpful.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started and call our meeting to order. I want to welcome all of you who are participating to another meeting of the First Friday Breakfast Club, an association of gay, bi, and trans men, largest private breakfast club in the state of Iowa. And to date, we have raised more than $400,000 for scholarships to be awarded annually to Iowa high school seniors who have done significant things to educate about LGBTQ issues and to reduce homophobia. And to date, we have awarded, I think it's more than 125 scholarships. The real power of the program is our ability to present those scholarships at high school graduations around the state, sometimes in front of audiences that thinks they've never seen a real live gay person before. And those experiences have sometimes ended with standing ovations. It's been a very powerful scholarship program. I want to thank David Cotton for hosting us today. And he has been our host for the meetings as we have been meeting virtually now for several months. Meeting virtually allows us to have outstanding speakers that are more distant geographically than right there in central Iowa. So that's one good thing. It also allows for broader participation all over people who can sign on to a virtual meeting. We have just a few announcements before we turn to the introduction of our speaker. First, I want to just remind everyone that's on our email list that you should have received a survey. The board of directors is trying to reach out to our members and supporters to survey how we're doing and how we might be able to do better and how we might be more effective, particularly in light of our meeting virtually. And so if you would check on that and fill out the survey, it will help the board of directors make some decisions about how we move forward most effectively and support our members. Also, if you don't find that survey, if you'll let me know, we'll see that you get another copy of the survey to be able to take that. Next, our board of directors will be meeting next Tuesday. That's December the 8th at 6:30 Central Time. And if you are a member and want to participate in our board meetings, you're certainly welcome to participate. Just let me or David Cotton know, and we'll get you the sign-on information. Another announcement, our newsletter. We put out a monthly newsletter. If you're not a current paid member or a subscriber, you can subscribe to the newsletter for $15 a year and it'll be mailed to you. And our copy deadline is December the 14th. That's a week from next Monday. So if you have something on your mind, why get it written down on a piece of paper and get it sent to me electronically. We'll get it edited and into the newsletter. We'd be happy to share whatever might be on your mind. So that's a week from next Monday. Next, we also have a website, ffbciowa.org. And we want to encourage everyone to check out that website. You can find a number of resources there, including an audio of our past speakers. So if that's something that would be of interest to you because you want to hear a speaker again, or you missed a meeting and want to hear one of our distinguished speakers, why check that out on our website. We also have upcoming and sort of website facelift that's coming our direction. Thanks to the volunteer services of Jeff Sorensen, who's at Iowa State University, and he's agreed to do a redesign of our website. So check that out. Also, in terms of announcements, the Des Moines Gay Men's Chorus is going to be having a live stream concert on December the 18th and 19th. That's a Friday and a Saturday. The title of this concert is Light in the Darkness. And if you'll go to check out Des Moines Gay Men's Chorus online, there is a place there where you can sign up for that streaming concert on either the 18th or the 19th. Now, are there any other announcements that anyone needs to have made? Hearing none, just remember that if you're not actually speaking, and there is going to be an opportunity for question and answer, if you're not actually speaking, why it's best to mute your screen. And with that, I will turn to Mason Ogoji to introduce our speaker this morning. Mason.
Good morning. Are you able to see me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm
Oh my
Mason
God.
Bulgogi, and I'm sorry I have to wear a mask, but I'm in a crowded train station and I'm just afraid of contracting COVID. So I thought I would protect myself and the rest of my fellow travelers. And having said that, I must reveal myself to be someone rather different. I am Rekha Basu, the mother of today's speaker. Romen, if you are suffering from PTSD, I'm very sorry about this, but there is a backstory to that mask of mine. And Ram, you okay? Your pulse
Yeah,
okay?
I think my heartbeat has caught up with them.
Sorry, take a deep breath, take a glass of water. Do you remember this mask?
Yes, that mask. I think it was used to punish me whenever I was bad as a child. I was told
Well,
the mask would be taken.
that is exactly correct. Okay, folks. So first of all, welcome, Ramen. Take some time to gather yourself together. So the story here is, and thank you, Jonathan and David, for inviting me and facilitating this surprise. Ramen, it was not my idea to be the surprise introducer of you, but it was my idea to introduce the mask. So folks, for those of you who don't know anything about this mask story, and I imagine that would be none of you, the background to all of this is that when Roman was just under 2 years old, I dragged him out to Iowa from New York, away from his father, his older brother, everything he knew that was familiar. And I had gotten a job that I just couldn't turn down as an editorial writer at the Des Moines Register. So because I was working long hours, I hired a young French Algerian woman to be an au pair from France and brought her over here to take care of him. Now, at the age of 2, Ramen could be rather challenging. He's always had a strong will. But the one thing that Malika and I could do to get him to behave was to threaten to pull out the aforeseen mask. He would just suddenly snap into shape. For some reason that really, I don't know, it shook him. So Ramen always just knew what he wanted, and he could turn that on and off very successfully. So we always had that come back, and that was the mask. When he was about 3 years old, Ramen announced one fine day, after spending a night at his friend Wade's house, that he was going to move in with Wade and his family. It had something to do with an Iowa dish called tater tot casserole that Wade's mother used to make, and I didn't. And it involved frozen green beans and potatoes and cream of mushroom soup. I, on the other hand, made coq au vin and chicken curries, which he had absolutely no use for. So he announced that unless I could get that recipe and start replicating the aforementioned tater tot casserole, it was moving in with Wade. And he actually took this rather far. He went into his bedroom, he packed up his things. Raj was traumatized, his older brother, saying, "What is going on with Ramen? He's really leaving us." I said, "Don't worry, he won't." And he was trotting out the door when I had to submit and call Wade's mother. And with every bit of humility, ask her for the recipe for tater tot casserole. I did, in fact, learn how to make it, and Ramen consented to stay in the home. Of my 2 sons, Ramen has always been the more unpredictable. His older brother, Raj, always knew he'd be a lawyer, but Ramen had opposing pulls. He did wrestling and show choir in high school, often practicing on the same night, which meant running down the hallway in his onesie and then having to quickly switch to sequins so he could go for practice to both. He has always loved politics and performance and always found a way to marry the two. Ramen has run for and been elected class president from about the time he was in daycare, all the way through college. And the way that he did it was quite creative. His formula for getting elected always involved self-parody. He'd mount these hilarious self-effacing poster campaigns in which he was some mob boss with half a body hanging out of the trunk of the car, rather than putting on some 10-point campaign about how he planned to turn things around and improve school efficiencies. Now, I'm not objective here. I'm incredibly proud of Ramen and what he's accomplished in a relatively short time. He moved to LA to break into the comedy business, having come out of a political appointee position with the Obama administration, with no job, no place to live, and no car. And within 2 months, he had a job with a prestigious creative artists agency in LA, an apartment, and a lifelong relationship with a partner. But I'm going to step aside and let him take it from here, with due thanks to all of you for letting me, and due apologies to Ramen for the trauma. Love you, babe.
Love you too. Thank you so much. What an incredible surprise. Greetings from, I would say sunny LA, but it is dark LA at 5 a.m. I opted to just not go to bed last night instead of get up early because I thought that would be easier. Just kidding. I'm so honored to speak before you all. As you mentioned that you do in fact have such outstanding speakers, so I appreciate your making an exception for me. I have to confess I did call my mom last night and ask for a few pointers on how this should go, and she said basically there are two schools of thought. She said I'll sort of think about what the group is interested when I speak, what's in the news, what material I might have already, and how I could tailor it to their interests. She said, when your father would speak before this group or a similar one, he would just sort of do it without any thought or preparation and get twice the reception that I or anyone else might otherwise have, because that's just sort of what he was able to do in life. So I will take a fusion going off of some loose notes here. My goal, this is not a serious talk that I give. I submitted a bio that I think I pretty much wrote just for this occasion to make myself sound like a legitimate speaker. Little did I know that Mason Bulgogi would be introducing me. My goal here is to give you guys sort of just a brief outline of my interests and what I'm up to, and what is, I think, to some degree, a non-traditional path. But I'm especially excited for questions after that. I think maybe my guiding principle in life is something my dad said when I was younger, that in Iowa, a little bit of exotic goes a long way. And my mind often goes back to that. For me, being at a school and growing up in the bougie South of Grand neighborhood, all I really know, and my mom alluded to this with the tater tot casserole story, all I really knew were wealthy white kids who were my friends. And for me, there was one or two ways to go. You either lean in and never really look at yourself in the mirror and can kind of pass yourself off as one of those kids in that group. I think at a very early young age, a buddy of mine said to me in what he thought was a compliment, he said, you know, Roman, sometimes I even forget that you're not white like the rest of us. That was to some degree triggering to me. And it made me realize, in the vein of a little bit of exotic going a long way, that I wanted to embrace my differences, and that growing up in a neighborhood where I didn't look like everyone else gave me the opportunity to really lean into that and be different, not just in appearance, not just in coming from a family background that others didn't have, but in every other regard. And it led me to want to be a leader in class, and it led me to want to be a class clown. And that has been my guiding principle really my entire life, is to embrace the things that make me different and use them to stand out and use them to my advantage whenever possible. It was funny because in many ways I saw myself as different because I was a brown kid in the Midwest. And then I went to college at a really diverse school, Amherst, on the East Coast. And Amherst was about 50% minority. So I quickly found that making jokes about having a different color skin than everyone else didn't get me very far. So instead, I quickly turned to the fact that I was from the Midwest to what made me special and unique. And I really leaned on the fact that I was from Iowa as a sense of identity when I was surrounded by peers who were from New York and Boston and California and a lot of international students. And so it was funny to sort of flip that on its head. And largely since then, being from Iowa is probably what I've taken pride in more than anything else. A little bit about my upbringing. I think you folks already know who my parents were, who are, I would describe my my upbringing as a storybook childhood. I had everything I wanted in terms of love and family and support. Obviously, my dad passed away when I was 16, his dad passed away when he was 6. And I think that for his childhood, that really hardened him. Um, his family had no money. They had absolutely no support system. And that meant for him that as a 6-year-old boy, uh, he had to be the man of the house, and he had to do something that would support them, stand up for them, and really provide anything they would need for his entire upbringing. And for me, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, it was very much the opposite experience. I think that in the same way that a loss of one's father hardened my dad, it softened me. Uh, my father's passing was a sort of wake up call for me from the entire community, the entire city of Des Moines, really, and folks all over the country and world, that we had a very strong support system. That no matter what I did in life, from that moment on, I felt like I would truly be supported, and that there would be people looking out for me and showing love to me and making life as easy as possible for me, in this act of goodwill that every person that I had even interacted with, people I had never met, truly wanted to offer me. That came from nowhere stronger than my own mom, who has been the most supportive member of my life for as long as I can remember, alongside my dad. But this is truly, I think, one of the guiding principles of my life, is that from that, tragedy in 16 of losing my dad, it was a moment that I learned that I was supported such that I could live a life where people would be there for me, and that I could take risks and I could do things and try things that not everyone else had the privilege to do. And I think that's in many ways led to whatever minor success I have right now. So a little bit about myself. As my mom mentioned, both politics and comedy are my guiding principle. One might say that I got the politics from my dad, and the politics from my mom, and the comedy from my dad. That would be both an oversimplification and false, because not only was my dad sort of deeply, deeply engaged in politics and issues that people cared about, he was just able to present it with humor in a way that somehow managed to cross bipartisan lines. But my mom is actually extremely funny. Don't ever let anyone tell you that she isn't really, truly one of the main guiding principles in my own sense of humor, and the reasons I've always been interested in making people laugh. So I look to my dad and my mom at the fact that they kept things light and wanted to entertain people while also having really serious sides. And that was something I always wanted to do. I'll never forget that my dad saw a trailer for a movie when I was, I think, 14 years old. The movie was called Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, about a Korean and Indian stoner who get really high and want to go on a night-long quest to get some munchies food. I was 14. Seeing a movie like that with my parents was highly inappropriate and awkward. But my dad saw the trailer and basically said, "Oh my God, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. There's a guy named Kumar, the character, and uh, and they've made a movie where basically he looked at me and said, 'Someone like you is represented.'" And that was a big deal. And we went and saw the movie again, awkward, hilarious though. Uh, Little did I know the impact that movie would have on my life. So later on, when I was a little older, when I was as my mom mentioned, I ran for student government president at every stage of my life, including high school and college. Maybe it was somewhat of an ego thing, but at the time I legitimately told myself it was because I wanted to help people. I got to college and I tried out for the school improv group. I didn't get in, and I was devastated because comedy was what I really cared about. It just so happened that the improv group met at the same time as student government on Monday nights. And so, as crushing of a blow as that was to me, it instead allowed me to run for student government and forge my own identity. And through student government, I think I was able to, in some ways, bring out the sense of humor and comedy along with seriousness in the way that I felt I was lacking and had been rejected from. And I think that was a lesson for me, that you can always fuse those things that you're interested in, and that politics and government were a place that on a basic human level are about connecting with other people, and making folks laugh and entertaining them are a large part of that. So in 2007, as you all know too well, we had the Iowa caucuses, and we, unlike anyone else in the world, got to decide the fate of Barack Obama and whether or not he might potentially go on to become president. I decided to intern for the Obama campaign, as I'm sure many of you were involved in that race, whether it was for Obama or Hillary or John Edwards, or I don't know, maybe there's some big Bill Richardson, Chris Dodd supporters on this call. So I went into the office. I think Obama was still polling down by 20, 30 points to Hillary and Edwards at that time. And this was an incredible experience for me, not just because I believed in the candidate and it was a lot of fun, but it ended up shaping my life. Really everything, a lot of the things I think about that I do right now, my interests, my friends, go back to that. So in 2007, the campaign called me and said, we are impressed by this organization of students you have at Roosevelt High School, and we would like to send you a guest speaker. Do you know who actor Cal Penn is? Now, I knew who actor Cal Penn was. I was a very big fan of his. Not everyone necessarily knew him by his real name. They knew him by his character. Actor Cal Penn is the South Asian Indian actor who plays Kumar in the Harold and Kumar movies. The film I mentioned that my dad had taken us to when I was 14. So this guy was one of my idols, because not only was he hilarious, but he had broken barriers as the South Asian who could play a role named Kumar and do it without an accent and do it effortlessly. And so I invited him. So he came to Roosevelt. I was incredibly nervous to meet him because of the extent to which I looked up to him. But we really hit it off. And as a result, we sort of stayed in touch. And throughout the course of the next 12 years, up until now, last year, he and I would remain in touch, and we would remain connected and friends. And this is to say that while I did show up in Hollywood not knowing what I was going to do, I was super incredibly lucky to have this actor as a mentor who had been guiding me for over a decade. But that also happened not because I set out to pursue comedy, but because I stepped into a campaign office trying to help get this guy elected, to this guy being our 44th president of the United States. And the spoils I received for that were being friends with a comedic actor who I looked up to. It was very much this serendipitous moment where something I had not set out to do ended up landing right in my lap. So I interned for the Obama campaign. I went off to college at Amherst. I graduated in May 2012, and 3 days after graduation, I was working full-time as a campus field organizer on Iowa State University's campus back home in Iowa for the Obama re-election campaign, which was an incredible job. It was a lot of work, but it was really, really rewarding, as you all can imagine. So Obama won re-election. I applied to work in his administration and had a couple interviews that ultimately did not yield anything. So then I hopped on Bruce Braley's Senate campaign, if you guys remember that race, which to me, when I took that job, it was 13 months out from the election. Bruce Braley was a real hotshot. I told myself basically, well, my life is set. I'm working for this guy who's definitely going to win. He will definitely be the next United States Senator. I'll go to DC and I'll be one of his top advisors. And I guess I'll be doing that for the next 50 years. We all know how that turned out. The race didn't go quite as we had wanted it to, unfortunately, and it was not Senator Joni Ernst's only election to the United States Senate. I think some of us are still recovering from that one, but that gave me a new opportunity to form a different path. So the race ended. I found myself unemployed again. And I told myself, all right, I know how this goes from when the Obama campaign was over. I will de-stress for a little while. And for all I know, that could lead to months of hanging out with friends and drinking and sleeping late while I don't have a job. And I'm not going to let that happen again. So I packed up and moved to Chicago for a couple months and took a job at the Second City, or took some classes at the Second City, where I got to, for the first time in my life, really pursue studying comedy. It was an incredible experience, and it was for the first time in my life. I did it as a hobby. For the first time in my life, I thought, wow, this is something that I could see myself doing seriously. I'm very, very far away from that, but you never know. This is something I enjoy. During those months while I was in Chicago, I got a call from the Obama administration who said, we have your resume. We know you applied a couple years ago, and we're sorry that didn't work out then, but we have an opening at the United States Department of the Interior, and we're wondering if you'd like to interview for that. I said, that sounds incredible. I'll be totally honest with you. I don't really know a ton about what the Department of the Interior is and does. And they said, okay, great. Thanks for letting us know that. Don't ever tell anyone that ever again. From now on, you are a huge fan of the Department of the Interior. You've been closely following what they've been doing for years. You will be familiar with every intricacy of the policies they're working on. If you want this job, we will send you on to the next level. You'll meet with, this was the White House Placement Office. They said, you'll meet with folks there. But please don't repeat what you just told us if you're serious about working there. So a few days later, I was on the phone with the Department of the Interior, telling them what an absolute privilege it was to interview for what was truly my favorite government agency, an organization that I had followed for my entire life and with which I was intricately familiar with their work. So the rest is history. I moved out to DC, and I got to spend the final couple years of the Obama administration serving as the scheduling and advance person for the United States Secretary of the Interior, which meant that I would man her schedule. And whenever she traveled somewhere, which for those of you who aren't super familiar with the United States Department of the Interior, first of all, shame on you. This is something everyone should know. Second of all, they are the government agency that oversees all of our land and public parks and tribal reservations. So I was quickly told this job, I had really lucked into it. They said there are hundreds of scheduling and advance folks and across the Obama administration, and State Department is probably the most coveted one because it means you get to travel around the world. Department of the Interior is the second most coveted one because you get to travel to national parks and see really the most beautiful things that this country has to offer. So I took that job. It was an incredible experience. The job ended on, what was it, January 20th, 2017. I like to say that I was fired by President Trump, which is not a lie. As a political appointee, that meant that my job was over the moment Obama's term ended and there was a changing of the guard. So I had to ask myself what I was going to do since I was unemployed, and I packed up and I moved to LA, sleeping on a friend's couch, just hoping that I could find work. Now, this was not an incredibly courageous act. because my mom told me explicitly, if this is something you truly believe in, pursue it and I will support you no matter what happens. That is a place of immense privilege. And it is something that I remind myself of all the time, that this is not something that everyone with a passion gets to do. I come from an incredibly supportive family that is by no means wealthy, but has the means to take a risk like that and support a dream like that. And I remind myself of that every day on both the good days and the bad days, that I was able to do this because my mom believed in me and offered me the support. So I moved out. I sent my resume around to a couple different places, including Creative Artists Agency, which is the big talent agency in Hollywood that reps the biggest actors, actresses. And I applied for some random position that was not necessarily a good fit for me. And I went through about a month of interviews until they called me and said, hey, we're really sorry. We went in a different direction. However, we have a position open and we think it would be tailor-made for you. They said, we are looking basically for someone from the politics and government world who is looking to break into entertainment. They said at the end of the Obama administration, our paid speaking department, who, you know, rep folks and give them, you know, get them large paychecks for giving speeches toward to private organizations. By the way, I look forward to receiving my very large paycheck from this speech, having learned that world. Just kidding, of course. They said basically, we signed some Obama administration folks. We signed Joe Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. We signed Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice, and a couple others. And we promised them that they'd be happy here because we have this incredible infrastructure of folks who have political experience that can help with their events, scheduling in advance, which is what you did. They said, as it turns out, we were sort of stretching the truth, and we have no one like that. And now Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden are coming to CAA, Creative Artists Agency, and will be expecting this from us, and it doesn't exist. We are interested in hiring you to sort of oversee their events. And I very naively, not realizing that people would kill for an in like this, my response was basically, that sounds great. I think it would be a really good job, but the truth is I'm kind of trying to step away from the political and government world, and this sounds like it would maybe be sucking me back in to some degree. They said, I don't know how much you know about CAA. We're the biggest talent agency in the world. We rep Trevor Noah. We rep James Corden, Colin Jost, pretty much every major comedian and entertainer that you would be interested in. We'll make you a deal. Come on board the speakers department. If you do well with the Biden's speeches, then we will expand your portfolio, and you can also handle the speeches by these comedians and actors that you're so interested in. So, for one, little did I know I was working for who would be the next president of the United States, and spent a year and a half setting up events with the Biden's team and going to sometimes his speeches. I could probably recite his stump speech to heart by now. I also just have to interject that was an incredible experience, actually. The VP's team were really kind and really thoughtful people. And I ended up becoming really excited about his candidacy for president. So good news, just having gotten to see behind that curtain that it was a team I think we should all be excited about. But I did that for about a year and a half. Biden stopped doing paid speeches with CAA so that he could declare his candidacy for president. And I think it was the Monday after that that he left. And I was sort of now at a turning point for what I do career-wise. and I get a call from Penn, and he says basically, hey, I've gotten this show that was picked up by NBC. It is called Sunnyside, and it is a sitcom about immigration. He said, I'm starring in it, and I've created in it, and I've created it, and it's basically the culmination of my life's work. It's something I'm really, really excited about, and I need an assistant to help me out. He said, at this point, I know you might be above it, especially, by the way, I was not above it, especially since it would involve getting him coffee and doing his laundry. He said, but, I'm not asking you to do those things. I'm not saying it's definitely for you, but it would come with an opportunity to learn an incredible amount, help create a lot of comedy yourself, and act really as an advisor. And I said, I know you have some awkwardness about hiring a friend to do things like get you your coffee, but I'm all in. And this is, I think, an experience that I would do anything for. So I did it. I spent a year and a half with Cal working as a personal assistant to him, getting to tag along for every Jimmy Kimmel, James Corden appearance, getting to write comedy for him, and getting a full immersion in the political comedy world. So finally, a few months ago in March, I was literally his assistant, and he was gone for a week traveling. So I didn't have anything to do. I guess this was February. So in my free time, realizing that I had no writing samples and that the time would come where it was no longer, I could no longer be his assistant because, I had just sort of outgrown it. I wanted to move closer to being an actual Hollywood writer, but again, didn't quite have that experience yet. So in my free time in the month of February, I started writing up loosely an idea for what could be a political comedy show that I thought he could host for leading up to the election, especially about getting young people involved in the political process. My thinking was this: the best case scenario here is twofold. One, I have a writing sample. Two, given that I pitched something to Cal, he will see that I'm serious about taking that initiative, and maybe in the future it'll help. It will help him find ways to promote me in terms of looking for other jobs and trying to become maybe a writer's assistant or whatnot. What I didn't realize was that he would end up loving what I wrote him, this outline. He read it, and he said, this is incredible. Let's try and make this show together. So he took it immediately to his talent agency, United Talent Agency, which was a competitor of CAA where I had worked. And UTA immediately said, we love this, and we think this could really be something. So the next thing we did, they said, we should find you a producing partner because you guys would do the creative. You would talk about, you would come up with the ideas for this show. But what you need is an organization that could provide the cameramen and actually, the producing, the actual making the stuff. So the first thing we did was Cal, myself, and Samantha Bee from TBS and from The Daily Show and her assistant had a 45-minute Zoom call where we got to pitch the show to them, which was really, truly one of the craziest moments in my life, to go from being an assistant, which was still the title I held at the time, to talking to one of my comedic idols, Samantha Bee, about why I thought she should invest in my show that I had created and help make it a reality. She ended up passing because she said that while she loved the premise for the show, she didn't think it was possible to make it during a time of COVID, which is totally reasonable. It would take a lot of reconceptualizing from what I had written because I wrote it in February and it was not under the assumption that the world would be in lockdown. But we ended up finding a different producing partner. We ended up pitching it to 6 different TV networks, and we ended up selling it to Freeform. They used to be called ABC Family, owned by Disney, and then they rebranded and are now sort of young and hip and edgy. And Freeform made us an offer. Vice made us an offer. And in many ways, Vice might have been the safer path. They have probably more viewers and a lot of infrastructure. But our thinking was that Vice is sort of an echo chamber, and that a lot of people who turn into what is already a fairly progressive organization have their minds made up about who they're going to support and who they're going to vote for. Whereas this Disney Channel owned network, Freeform, we thought there's a good chance that you've got some kids, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are watching a Disney movie, that ends, and they unintentionally start watching our show, learn a thing or two, and decide to vote and get involved in the process. So in what was an absolute whirlwind, I went from being an assistant, getting someone's coffee, to being an executive producer of my own show within a week. We made 6 episodes, which we did really rapidly. Hillary Clinton was our second guest. And it was truly what I would say is living the dream. It was what I went to Hollywood to do, and somehow found myself doing it. In the final episode, or in the final week of making this show, I reached out to the United Talent Agency and said, basically, I'm not sure if I'm high profile enough, but since I've made the show, I was wondering if you'd be interested in representing me as my agents. And they responded with a couple young, scrappy agents who were looking for up and coming talent who wasn't necessarily established. They said, we would love to represent you. You seem like a good fit for us. They called me a couple days later and said, we already have an opportunity. There is this TV host, Lily Singh. She has a late night show on NBC called A Little Late with Lily Singh. She has over 15 million Instagram followers. She started by making YouTube videos on her own, and they became a global success. And most of all, she is Indian woman, Sikh, Punjabi, like my own family. And so they said the problem is her submission packet, which is what would normally take people a couple weeks to put together, writing comedy, is due in 3 days. Do you think you could work on that? So I busted my ass. I got this submission packet together and I submitted it. The next day I got a call from their new showrunner and he said, could we chat? I liked your packet. He and I talked. The next day they reached out again and said, we'd like you to talk to our executive producer. That went well. And a week later, I was interviewing with Lily Singh. And a few days after that, I got that job and became, for the first time in my life, a staff writer for a comedy show. That was 3 weeks ago. Today, I am very happily living out my dream as a comedy writer in LA. I have a village of folks to thank for this, starting with my mom and a very supportive community in Des Moines, and my mentor, Cal, and every project. Everyone's career in this industry and many others is only as good as the current project you're working on. So for all I know, this show may end and I may be very much out of work. Maybe back to Des Moines, living in the old childhood bedroom again. But I'm able to take those risks because I know that that bedroom is waiting for me if I ever need it. So that's my story. And I am incredibly happy to share it with you and to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roman. Are there any questions that anyone would like to pose for him? Anyone?
I have something to ask Roman. You were talking about the interviewing for the Department of Interior, and you said, oh, I know everything about it. I followed you for years. Did you actually research it? And did they ask you any questions like, what's your favorite, I don't know, project, national park, whatever, like tough questions?
That is a great one. So for those of you panicking and immediately thinking, I can't believe the Obama administration would do such a poor job vetting someone who could just lie his way through an interview. I stretch the truth a little bit in that they didn't grill me about policy positions. I did thoroughly do my research and I was ready for anything they could have thrown at me. But the job I had as scheduling in advance, I wasn't exactly a policy advisor. So while there were things that I needed to know, it was not essential that I was in the weeds in interior policy. So they didn't grill me on it. So it was nothing that a few days of research couldn't overcome.
I got a question for you. You've talked about how you feel your background here in Des Moines and Iowa has been a strong foundation for you. You've got a kind of a bedrock here back in Iowa, but moving out into the world, a lot of times as an Iowan, we kind of sometimes face the stereotypes and chuckles about being from Iowa. Now that you're out in LA, have you found yet that that's followed you a little bit, Iowa boy, or do people kind of go beyond that?
That's a fun one. I mean, I think you sort of have to lean into it, right? Like let's think about what those stereotypes are. One is that maybe you're in the middle of the country and, you're in flyover country and connected from the rest of the country and world per se. But another thing about Iowa, the other only thing people know about us really is the Iowa caucuses. And so that wields an incredible amount of power. On one hand, you can tease us and say, oh, you don't, you're from a cornfield and you've never used technology, et cetera. On the other hand, I could retort with, yeah, the same Iowa that chose the leader of the free world and maybe the most popular president in the history of this country, at least in terms of personality. So I think in terms of your question, I think it comes not just with leaning into it and leaning into those stereotypes about what kind of food we eat and what kind of beer we drink, which provides a lot of fodder for comedy writing. Iowa is not without its quirk, and it's not without its quirks, but no, I think it comes with the opportunity to educate a lot of people too. And I think probably everyone who has interacted with me now knows something about Iowa that they didn't previously know, partly because I'm so proud of my heritage and want it to be a part of my personality.
And a follow-up question: Have you found a good tater tot casserole out in LA?
I looked for the recipe recently. I was thinking about maybe surprising my friends with it at the Thanksgiving dinner table. It turns out it is also referred to as green bean casserole. If you can't find it, look by just looking up tater tot casserole. But yes, it has frozen tater tots and frozen beef and green beans in it. But no, if you have, Wade, a good recipe for tater tot casserole, please send it to me and make sure to CC my mom. Not that hers isn't incredible.
Other questions? Anyone?
Yeah, hi, this is Neil Salowitz.
Hey, Neil.
Hi, I always thought that either you or your brother Raj were someday going to be president of the United States. I've thought that since you were a kid. What is your next personal political move?
Well, thank you. I'm very flattered to hear that, although given what we saw with our last president, it's not necessarily a compliment saying that someone could aspire to that office. Also, isn't it great that I could say last president as if that's classic history right now? But no, seriously, it's a good question. It's something I've thought a lot about, is how do I fuse those dreams of politics and comedy. And I think it took me a little while to go all in on comedy and maybe tweet things or make jokes that I might not otherwise, because in the back of my mind, there was this thought of, well, what if you do want to run for office or serve in the government again? And I think basically I just made the decision within the past few years of being in LA that if I should decide to ever run for office or get involved in politics and government, which I have no intention of doing again necessarily, if I'm going to do that, I want to do it based on my own personality. And if that means that I was ever running for an office, I would be proudly holding up my irreverent jokes and comedy that I'd written and saying, this is who I am and this is what I care about. That would be very different, I think, from what the vast majority of people in government do, which is build their life around a run for government. And then let's say you lose, what have you spent your life doing except for building up something and it's suddenly gone in an instant? But now the further away I get from that, the more I have no interest in running for office, because I think that comedy is an incredibly powerful tool to influence the system from outside, and making a political show, I felt like I was really able to do that, and I'd love to continue on that path rather than, necessarily doing it from, within the government. Now, that is all to say that I guess if it's got to be me or my brother will be president of the United States.
Are there other comments or questions?
I just had
Yes.
a quick one. What does a comedian do for self-care?
It's a really good question. Well, I'm in LA, so I think marijuana is self-care for a lot of people. Not necessarily, I would not consider it self-care for me. It would probably make me too paranoid to truly relax. Not that it isn't fun, but it's interesting. I think one thing is that maybe working at home during this pandemic makes things less stressful. In a comedy writer's room, you are typically working insane hours, but the fact that I get to do that in comfy clothes and from a couch and, next to my own kitchen has made it a smooth transition, and has made it, I think that has in and of itself been comforting and easier. Also, though, it's important to have a strong support system. I live with my girlfriend and 2 other roommates who, I don't have enough great things to say about my girlfriend, Sophia, Indian like me, which has finally made my family very proud. But it's important to have that, and to have someone who's interested in your work that you can bounce ideas off of and run my shitty jokes by, and then play games with and watch movies with and unwind at the end of the night, especially during the pandemic. I feel for anyone, who doesn't have some sort of a support system. Fortunately, my mom is holding our Cocker Spaniel, so that can come in many forms of support. But really, to answer that question, I'm incredibly fortunate to have someone to unwind with and do fun things and watch fun movies with and eat fun things. And not everyone has that, and I don't take that for granted.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Anyone
question.
else? Rick? You'll need to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
First of all, I'm sorry for arriving a little bit late this morning. Fridays are kind of crazy sometimes. I'm very curious about art because I was an art teacher my whole life, and maybe you've already answered this, but there's a fascinating David painting on the wall behind you. Is there a story with that, or do you know anything about it?
Yes. The story is that it's 5 a.m. in LA and my girlfriend is sleeping in our bedroom. So I am in my roommate's bedroom who's out of town, because the alternative, my girlfriend, was, well, I'll sleep through it, so you don't have to worry about me being in the background. And I said, are you freaking out of your mind? I am not going to do this with you tossing and turning in my bed in the frame behind me. So I am in my roommate's room because he is gone. That is to say, I have no great knowledge of art. I thought you were going in a different direction there about art and about the arts in general, which is something that I think through working in comedy writing and in the arts, I've really been turned on to, and the importance as it intersects with the government about funding for the arts and the ways that that can help, foster a lot of really important things in people's life. But when it comes to this particular piece of art, I am simply an admirer and not a curator.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the question.
Other comments or questions? Well, then we are getting close to the end. It occurred to me that comedy and comedians can transition into politics. Senator Al Franken would be a perfect example of that. So it doesn't cut off the possibility of you eventually going into the United States Senate or running for president. I got a little inkling of your career and decided you'd make an excellent speaker for the Breakfast Club, which you have proven to be. So I had turned to, how am I going to get that accomplished? How am I going to get him to do that? He would have to, he's out in California, I know, and he would have to be up early in order to do a 7 o'clock Central Time breakfast. How can I possibly get him to do this? And then I thought, I know his mother. I knew his father. And if anyone was going to be able to get him to do this at an ungodly hour of the morning, it would have to be his mother. And I've done her a favor or two now and then. So I figured maybe she owed me one and contacted her, and she was thrilled to be able to do that and got your almost immediate response, yes. So I thought, well, I'm on track now and I'm really burning up the track. I think it would be really fun to have your mother introduce you. And then got to thinking about that some more and thought, and it would be fun for him not to know ahead of time that that was who would be doing it. So we've been planning this and coordinating and coming up with an alias for her, and had her not let her face be shown until it was time to introduce you. So this has all worked out just really.
I love that. That was such a fun way to start this. So thoughtful, and I really appreciated that.
Well, it's impressive. Frankly, you have served as president in student government all through grade school and college. That's very impressive. You have helped get 2 presidents elected of the United States. That's very impressive. You have a remarkable career going. And one of the things that you have talked about that registered with me particularly was leaning into and embracing that which makes you unique. And if there's anything that would be a common thread for pretty much everybody that is on this virtual meeting, it would be people who have leaned into and embraced things that have made them unique and different, and owned it. And you have demonstrated repeatedly with the various opportunities that were presented to you at a time when you were without a job again or what have you, leaning into that situation and embracing it and making the most of opportunities that present themselves is really very, very commendable. And I'm pleased that I was able to finagle you as a speaker, because you make me really look good when you do so well. So thank you very much. I want to really express my appreciation for you getting up at this hour and doing this. I want to thank Mason Bogoji for handling the introduction. That was terrific. Thank you very much. I also want to give a shout out to Courtney Reyes. We're trying to build an alliance between FFBC and One Iowa, and she's the executive director there. So I'm really pleased that you were able to participate in our meeting today. You can look forward to our next meeting as well. Our next meeting is not going to be on January the 1st. The board of directors decided that having people get up for a 7 o'clock breakfast meeting on the first Friday of January wouldn't be very well received. So we are going to have our next meeting on January the 8th. January the 8th, write it down. Plan to be with us again for a virtual meeting. Our speaker, January the 8th, will be Eric Marcus. Eric will be speaking to us from the other coast. He's from Manhattan. And he is the author of Making Gay History. There is a website, makinggayhistory.com, also a podcast by that name. He's also the author of Breaking the Surface, the autobiography of Greg Louganis. So it should be a really fascinating opportunity for us, going first from the West Coast, then to the East Coast, and taking full advantage of the fact that these virtual meetings let us get speakers from far and wide, as well as allow for more participation of people who might not otherwise be able to join us at Hoyt Sherman Place. If there is nothing else, I will thank you again, Roman, for your presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you all. This was such an honor and such a treat. Seriously, thank you all for having me.
Great. All of you, stay safe, follow the science, and stay well. And we are adjourned. Thank you.